Welcome to the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast, dialoguing disability and discussing difference, inclusion, and all abilities in today's world. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Shapiro and Bob Nolly.
Hey, you keep finding your way back, and you found your way to episode 16, the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast. Hey there, folks. How are you? Coming in, have a seat. I got a chair for you. Here it is. Sit there. I'll sit here. This is Dr. Bob Nolly, your co-host. Here's my wonderful friend and host, Matthew Shapiro. Matthew, how are you?
I'm great, Bob. How are you? I come with my own chair, sir, so we're in good shape.
Yeah, I've stepped in that before. So it's not like, I'm not going to make that mistake again another dozen or two times.
Quite all right.
So what's up? How's your week been?
Been very, very busy. I've been on the road traveling like a lunatic. I was in Atlanta. I was in Buffalo. I was in upstate New York. I was in lots of different places. I've been on the road warring it like crazy, but super excited to be.
And you had back to school night too.
I did. I had actually back to school week, actually. I was fortunate enough recently to speak both at my college alma mater, VCU, and at my high school alma mater, J.R. Tucker. So it's been, one, a very weird week because it makes me realize how old I am, and two, just an honor to be able to go back to my alma maters and spread some hopefully good words.
Well, we'll get the details about that for sure, but this is different tonight because, we invite people to come up and sit up here on the porch with us.
Yes.
Tonight we're around the table. We're actually live around the table.
Yes, it's a new night for us.
And when you sit around the table, you know what happens? The guests come.
Yes.
And we're lucky enough to have guests tonight.
We got a guest!
So with us tonight is Hunter Leemon, the organizer, founder, proprietor of Sportable.
Executive director.
Executive director?
I will help correct that.
Founder?
No.
All right, executive director.
But super excited to have Hunter here. And so tonight's episode is really about adaptive sports. And so want to have a dialogue about just adaptive sports and then hear about all the amazing work that Sportable does. Full disclosure, I am a Sportable athlete as well and have participated with Sportable for a number of years.
One of the finest athletes, I will say.
Hunter, let me just get this off by just welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for that nice plug, Hunter.
Yes.
I'm a decent athlete.
All right, so I guess, folks that are listening now, our first question that some of our new listeners may ask are, what are adaptive sports?
Sure. So Hunter, jump in at any time too. I know adaptive sports are just really any sports that people with disabilities can partake in. I know through Sportable and some other entities, I have been fortunate enough to hand cycle, scuba dive. I've done adaptive archery, which I just had practice yesterday, and if I do say so myself, I was shooting quite well.
He's very humble. That's the one thing we like about him.
So my only encounter with archery, I could never even get an arrow to stick in a target from any distance. So if you can do that, it's a huge victory.
And fun fact, I shoot with my teeth, not the bow and arrow. So
wow.
We're looking for a sponsor from a dentist. We have one. We're trying to get one.
Yeah, there you go.
I hear the phone ringing already.
I know.
Okay.
I know. But I really just wanted to have a dialogue with all of us and talk about adaptive sports, because I do think it is a important topic that, as we all know, what we try to do on the podcast each and every week is to open up people's eyes to things and challenges and positives and negatives that come about with living with a disability. So I figured adaptive sports would be a great topic for us to have a little chit chat about. So,
hey Hunter, well, how did you come to Sportable? Have you lived here your entire life?
I haven't. I'm from Brunswick County.
Okay.
So home of Brunswick Stew and Brian Stiff. We got the two BSs right there.
I know the Turnbulls. They're all there.
Harry Turnbull?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Boy, I tell you what, small world.
See, and you all think this is going to get cut out. This stays. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Mary Turnbull and husband Rag, are very close friends of mine. So,
oh boy, how about that?
So I hear Brunswick County. I'm going to go. Hey, Murray and Rag, and they went, of course, to Randolph-Macon too. That's where they went.
Did they really?
Yeah.
How about that? Oh man, world keeps getting smaller and smaller.
No, that's it.
So my driveway was literally 1 hour from the cigarette, right there on 95.
Oh wow.
So we were 1 hour away. So lots of people came up and worked in Richmond, and actually we consumed all of our news was Richmond, so Richmond Times-Dispatch and all the television news.
Yeah.
My dad was a big newspaper deliverer forever. So the paper has always been a big part of my life. I still read the paper every day. Most important thing you can do,
Nerd.
civic duty.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so from Brunswick, but came up here, went to Randy Mack because I was short, fat guy. The only thing I could do, only place I could play baseball is Division III.
I can empathize 100%.
Randy Mack took me in, and I played at Randy Mack, loved it. And I left the area for about 5 years, was in North Carolina and California. Found a young lady that was a lot better than I am, wanted to spend her life with me, which was pretty exciting. We've been back here now for 14, 15 15
That's cool. When you family like this, that's quite a miracle itself.
It is. Well, my check didn't bounce. So it worked out pretty well. So in 2008, I got blackmailed into coaching, into volunteer coaching the Power soccer team. And I'll never forget it because it was a Friday night, 8:00 over at the Deep Run Park, right? Right there off of I don't know, somewhere over there off gas. Sean Ball Park.
Yeah, in their indoor.
Richfield Park. What that Richfield Park?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Bitter. Don't want to be there Friday night.
Yeah, all you guys that are listening, don't worry. Don't go running for your nav system. Forget it. It's a nice place.
It's a great place.
Great place. But I'm bitter. Don't want to be there Friday night. Young guy, no kids, newly married. I show up and I fell in love with it. Best thing I ever did. And actually, other than one athlete on the team who might be sharing the table with us tonight, it was a good group of players. And that's how I got involved. And so I stayed involved. I actually continued to coach the Power wheelchair soccer team for probably 4 years. It was a total of 5 seasons. And then I got lucky enough to work for the Richmond Kickers here in town.
Oh.
And so I was lucky enough to take that relationship. I got a lot of our professional players, the guys that were they were good guys that wanted to give back and wanted to do it through soccer. So then we got some of those guys to come out and coach. And I just kind of kept the relationship. And then actually 4 years ago last month, I was lucky enough to start. And I'm actually a full-time employee. I'm the executive director, which some people think means I'm in charge, but I'm really not. I have a great team of folks. They execute everything, and I just do what I'm told.
You work harder than anyone else, and you have the keys.
Yes.
No, I don't know about that. I do what I'm told. I do it at home with my wife. I do it at work with my staff, and it's worked out pretty well.
So how competitive is Matthew?
How competitive is actually, funny enough, and not to jump too much into it, but I'll tell you this. We try to be very reactionary in all of our programs. There are lots of things in terms of operating a business that we want to be proactive about and get in front of things. Mm-hmm. But on our program side, we like to be reactive. We want athletes to be able to drive programming. And Matthew has been a pain in my butt for years because he wants our programming offered to his population to be more competitive. Mm-hmm. And that there's a lot of reasons why that's a huge burden for us financially. But you know what? If the need's there, we're going to figure out a way to make it happen. And this year, we're starting to see the fruits of that labor because what do we have in Power Soccer? Like 16 athletes?
We have 16 players. Most of them aren't. I would say the majority of them are actually new players, which is incredible. And yes, I will agree. I have been a pain in Hunter's ass for a number of years. Because I want to see Power Soccer kind of travel and try and compete. I am somebody who... I love adaptive sports, and I think they're very important. But this is one of the great things about Sportable, is it's not this, and the sports that are like this, it's not bad. But I am not there just to receive a participation trophy. I'm there to try and beat the person in front of me. And I've been around sports my entire life. I've grown up with sports, and so Sportable gives me that outlet in a number of different ways. And I can kick someone's ass across, if they're guarding me or they're trying to, beat me in an archery competition. I have somebody that I'm aiming for and I'm going after. So, that's rare, in adaptive sports. I would say a lot of times you have the miracle leagues and the other things. And again, I love all of those. I participated in all of those when I was younger. But I did have that competitive drive and that competitive fire to want to see how I sort of stacked up, so to speak, compared to other people who had disabilities, and so Sportable gives me that outlet to be able to do that. Hunter, I have a question for you. What are in your opinion? What are some of the biggest challenges that come with not only doing Sportable but just adaptive sports in general? What would you say some of the biggest challenges are?
Gosh, so the biggest challenges, particularly on, so So as someone
think about it, if I may think about it. Think about it like globally, and then think about it from a Sportable perspective, because I want this to sort of be a global conversation, but then I also want to granularly get down to Sportable.
But listen. All program delivery is local, right?
Sure.
So I think a lot of the problems that we experience are going to be problems that are experienced by Paralympic and adaptive sports clubs all over the world.
Sure.
So there are a couple of them. First is I won't say financial barriers, but it does come down to money sometimes. But it's the equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like having the adaptive equipment so that our athletes can utilize that equipment to participate in certain sports. That's a huge barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the barriers that we try to break down. We own tons of equipment. We own adaptive equipment. We own athletic wheelchairs. We own adaptive oars for our kayaking program. We own tons of upright seats for our rowing program. There's just all kinds of, one of our core values is ingenuity, because sometimes you just have to make it up in the field, right?
Sure.
Just because every disability is a little bit different.
Sure.
Right. So I would say one of the barriers is clearly equipment. One of the other huge barriers, though, frankly, is access. It's knowledge. So I always say this whenever I'm out in the community talking. If you gave me $1 million to do a marketing program, that'd be awesome. We could do all these billboards. We would do all these commercials. It would be great. But you know what? It may not move the needle. Because what you have to do is you have to get to the parents and to the care providers in order to let them know that we'll take good care of, of their kids or of their spouse or whoever the case may be, that they can come to us and that they can be in a safe environment where they can execute the sport. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to have the bandwidth to be able to get the word out there to let people know what you do.
Sure.
And so I think getting the information out and then having the equipment, those are probably the two biggest barriers locally. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, that comes in with financial, right? Because the equipment all costs money, and then you got to pay people so they can execute the programs. Those three components are probably the three biggest barriers we face. Now, in terms of global, when you talk about things that might impact the sport globally, it's like everything. It's attention. It's being able to be top of mind. I mean, I was lucky enough to teach a sports business class for a long time, and I used to tell my kids all the time there are only two kinds of sports. There's sports with television revenue and sports without it. Mm-hmm. There's only two kinds of sports, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so unless you have one of those big stages where you have a huge platform to display it, not many people they just don't have the interest in what you're doing.
So do you think that is one of the biggest reasons that they're like, because I know out west, adaptive sports are huge. I know, when you go into mountainous areas,
yes.
like you've got tons of adaptive sports programs, but you're not seeing it really take hold, in the middle of the country and kind of on our coast where we are here in Virginia. And that's one of the great things that Sportable is trying to accomplish. It's become, that East Coast kind of spot for adaptive sports. So do you think because lack of exposure and all of that, that is what makes it hard, or does that question make sense?
No, it does. But here's the thing, though. This is, all right, so the demographic profile of people that tend to ski and go to mountain resorts is pretty good.
Yeah.
So what you have is the Paralympic sport clubs that are based in mountain resorts or based in ski places, and they are out west, a lot of them in Colorado, Wyoming, in that area, and then also in the Northeast, right? Mm-hmm. The amount of athletes they touch sometimes can be in the thousands because they're destinations, because parents go there. The economic barriers aren't as big.
Sure.
When you come to an area like Richmond, where sometimes I can't get an athlete to participate in our sport if it's not on public transport, right? Those aren't the kind of families that are going out west or that are going to those areas. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like there's destination adaptive sports and then there's local adaptive sports, if you will. And so one of the big challenges for us is that we serve hundreds of athletes a year. And so it's the athletes that we serve in our everyday programming that, last anywhere from 6 to sometimes 25 weeks, depending on the program, to the one-off programming. And I shouldn't say a majority because I don't know, but a lot of the ski resorts and those destination places will have week-long programming. Mm-hmm. It'll be an intense week, but you're out there for a week, and you're going to play in
and that's 7. Oh, that's 7. That's 7 times that they're participating in. Like when you say it's a week-long program, that's basically 7 interactions that's
right.
Somebody has.
That's right. Yeah, 7 or 14. Maybe they do 2 a days.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Bob Nolly and Matthew Shapiro here with Hunter Leemon of Adaptive Sports. So you mentioned, Hunter, sometimes there are parental objections you have to overcome.
Yeah.
It seems like such an opportunity. Is that ever difficult?
Oh, very much so. So I think particularly when you're dealing with, let's talk about the youth side, right? So if you have a young person that has had a disability since birth, you've got Matthew,
that person.
Matthew, right? So by the way, the most powerful thing in the world is a mother that needs something for their child. Hell hath no fury like a mother that needs something for their kid, right?
Sure.
So if you have a child that has been dealing with a certain set of circumstances that makes it a little bit more difficult for the everyday interactions, you have a very protective parent. So you have to earn the trust of that parent in order for them to give up their child to you in order to execute the sport, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to establish trust. That's why our relationships with VCU Health, with Bon Secours, with Sheltering Arms, with HCA, with all the care providers are key, because if we can earn their trust, they can tell the parents that we can be trusted so they can give,
And I would think you would find them to be very willing partners, if not participants in the program.
Do. Yeah. But you got to be top of mind. You got to constantly be in front of them and telling them all the time, because they forget. They have their things they're doing every day too.
Right.
Yep.
I can also say that we get a ton of our volunteers from those supportive programs. We meet incredible volunteers every day, and I would also say that we couldn't probably do 90%, and I'll say we because I have been part of Sportable for pretty much since its inception. So
2005.
Yes. I probably started around that time playing soccer. Soccer was my first sport that I played, but so I do feel a kindred connection to Sportable because I want to see it grow. I want to see it get so many more athletes and have people get the opportunity to experience just athletics and then also competitive athletics. Because one of the other goals of Sportable is to just give people an outlet to quote unquote get off their couch, right?
That's right.
And give them an opportunity to try new activities. I know without Sportable, I would not have started doing archery, and I would not have started thinking about trying to do, I've thought about trying to do air rifle, although I don't know if my mother would trust me with an air rifle, but that's neither here nor there. I wouldn't have had the opportunities to do those programs. So, it's an incredibly amazing program. So, another question, Hunter.
Yes, sir.
What is and this might not be what's an ideal athlete? Is there such a thing as an ideal athlete?
He said what and then paused, and I thought he was going to ask me what the
I
square
could take
root
the pause
of,
out.
the square root of 90 was. And I was like, oh no,
This is one of those square root of 3 over 2 things. Yeah, okay.
Listen, I'm a firm believer that being an athlete is a state of mind.
Sure.
So I'm also a big believer in the 80-20 rule, right? So 80% of our athletes are happy to be out there. They're happy to experience whatever it is, opportunity that we're providing for them. 20% of the athletes are out there to kick your butt. They're out there to PR. They're out there to be a Paralympian. They're out there to achieve gold, whatever huge personal goal they've set up in terms of athletic achievement. A lot of them, I'd say 20%, are driven by that goal. But again, the 80% want to be out there. When you say the ideal athlete, you just want someone that wants to be out there, that wants to. We've tried to put a lot more structure around our programs in the last couple of years. So we ask all the athletes to identify goals. Their goal could just be, hey, I'm so excited to be here. Had a traumatic accident. I need to be on the water. It's great for me. It's fulfilling.
Sure.
That's awesome. Some people want to shave 30 seconds off their time on the mile. As long as they're committed and want to be there, that's an athlete we want to serve.
Sure.
And to me, that's the ideal athlete. You just want people that want to be there.
In your statement about your culture on your website, which is sportable.org, you can find Hunter and his organization at sportable.org. You mentioned transformation.
Yes.
And so, Matthew, tell me about your transformation.
I mean, I started out as a chubby middle schooler, probably. Maybe I might have been still in middle school. I can't remember. 2005, I probably was still in middle school. So I started out as a chubby middle schooler, and now I'm a little less chubby 27-year-old.
He didn't say chubby adult, did he? I was going to say, I know he didn't say that, did he?
But it's definitely, like I said, I've gotten the opportunity to have experiences in sports that I wouldn't. Right now, my two main sports are power wheelchair soccer and archery. And I was, I have archery practice. I just did one yesterday, and I was really proud of myself because I actually was able to move the target back a further distance. I'm actually shooting at, I think we measured it at close to 30 feet. I start, the normal distance is way further, and so I had to get used to how to operate the bow and everything. And because I shoot with my teeth, I can't always get the greatest strength on the shot. So the fact that I was able to improve my distance and still maintain pretty decent accuracy. I think last night when we did the final score, I think my last round I shot about 29, which with 5 or 6 arrows, scored 29 at a much larger distance than I've ever shot before. That's something I'm pretty proud of. And then when I'm able to get in my I can't talk tonight, everyone. I'm so sorry.
You seem to be doing well.
When I get in my power soccer chair, I can have that competitive juice and I can have that competitive fire, and that takes me back to when I managed my high school team for 4 years and watched my brother participate in sports. I'm actually able to be that athlete and try and kick.
How is your power soccer chair different?
It's an old chair that I used to use every day that my mom will let me beat to hell and beat up, because for those that don't know about power soccer, I sort of describe it as 4-on-4 soccer with a blend of pretty severe bumper cars and some craziness all around.
But you try to stop short of demolition derby.
Sometimes I've seen people flip over out of their chairs. It gets gnarly. It gets very.
You ever
gnarly.
seen Mad Max? That's pretty good.
Well,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's very similar to that. But it also takes a lot of skill and understanding of angles, and it's great to see because Hunter jokingly says, yes, I have been sort of bugging him for a number of years to try and get power soccer where some of our other programs are at, but to see where it was when we started to where it is now, when we have several new athletes, we're trying to develop a team where we might actually be able to travel. That excites me, because then I can be in a competitive environment and, like I said, try and kick someone's tush to win.
Okay. The other thing I read from your webpage is one of your pillars is passion. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about that, many times. I'm going to turn to Hunter now and ask him this. Can you just share with us one story? It doesn't need to be about Matthew. Probably, I would tell you, make it about somebody else. You don't have to name. Tell me about one experience that you've had as an executive director in this program that has let you know this is where your passion is. I'm doing the right thing with my life right now.
I told the story twice today, so I'm glad it's here 3 times the charm. It's the most transformational experience that I've had in my job. And because of this, I actually took my family to this event this year. So 2 years ago, we were in Louisville, Kentucky, okay? Which, by the way, they have great bourbon. It's not all of it's aged at sea, but it's pretty good bourbon. I had a very good trip when I was out there. But Kentucky takes their basketball very seriously, and Louisville hosted the National Wheelchair Basketball Championships for years. And so our youth team, for the first time, qualified. And I think it was 2016. Okay, so we qualified to go out there for the NIT bracket. And I'm going to tell you what, we got our butts kicked. I mean, we went out there and did not do very well. Now, a nice little follow-up to that, the following year we went out there and actually won a national championship. We won the NIT bracket.
Yes.
But the first year we go out there, right? And so one of our core pillars, one of the best things about adaptive sports and the work we do is that we work against social isolation. When you have a physical disability, the reality is a lot of your social experiences are relatively isolated because you're not able-bodied. You can't share the same experiences that a lot of the kids at your age share, right? So we're always constantly trying to reduce that, and that's one of the great things about our programming. But the reality is that even in executing youth wheelchair basketball, we're getting 10 to 15 kids and wheelchair users in the gym at one time. Let me tell you, when you go to the Expo Center in Louisville and you walk into the Expo Center,
or roll in,
right? I walked in, players rolled in, okay? You go into that Expo Center and there are 16 courts, and I'm not kidding you, 1,078, that was the total number. But that was the total number of wheelchair basketball players that were at that expo. And I'm just telling you, I got emotional. Couldn't handle it. I was like, this is unbelievable. Had to walk around for a little bit, came back. I thought it was amazing. I told everybody that was a part of Sportable that day, all the parents and everybody else, is like, I don't give a damn what it costs. I don't care. So long as we qualify for this event, we will always come because kids need to see it. They need to understand the impact of what they're doing and that there is a life beyond, it's not just about this youth basketball team. We're talking about professionals. We're talking about engineers. We're talking about people that that have everyday jobs, which, by the way, the unemployment rate for wheelchair users is through the roof. It's like over 50%. So here you are, you've got this group of committed people that are their role models, mentors, and peers. It was amazing. So, and just by the way, that was 2 years ago. This year I took my family. My son's 8 years old. We went, and it was awesome. My kid loved it. And I don't know, hopefully he won't get to the point where he'll think it's so transformational one day because he'll think it's like everyday life.
Sure.
But it was unbelievable to me.
Well, it's so funny that you talk about using your son as the example, because one of the things we talk about quite frequently on the podcast is sort of helping to break down the barrier and the stigma that surrounds disability. And based on that story, it sounds like adaptive sports can be a tool to help break down stigma and barriers. Would you agree with that statement? And have you had experiences where I can think of somebody, you would know who I'm talking about, our listeners wouldn't, but I have a player on our soccer team. His name's Larry.
Coach.
He is one of the
Coach.
That's right. He's one of the most energetic and joyful players that's on our team. Now, I love Larry, and I will admit he's probably not one of the more skilled players, but he is excited to be there every day. And whenever he sees you, whenever he sees other people, he's just excited to be part of a sports team like that. So do you think, how can sports play a role in helping to break down barriers and sort of work away at some of the stigma? Because that's something we talk about on the podcast quite a bit.
You talked about this earlier. You said something about kick and tush, right?
Yeah.
It enabled you to go out and to feel, like you could give it your all in a competitive environment. So here's the thing about being an athlete. It's a state of mind, right?
Yep.
There are tons of people now that think they're athletes because they play dodgeball, wiffle ball, kickball. There's this huge participation sports economy that has just exploded over the course of the last 15 to 20 years.
Sure.
We're running marathons and half marathons, and we're using any kind of excuse to drink either chocolate milk or beer after we go out and do some kind of, right. But a lot of people can relate to sports, right?
Sure.
So
it's a great connector.
It is a great connector. Whether they're a fan or a participant or a former participant, whatever, people can relate to sports. So all of a sudden and here's the other thing. Not only do you want that moment of connection to where you guys have a common interest and there's a shared interest and vision, right? But also people intuitively like to be around people like them, right? Sure. With those shared values, with those shared experiences, because all of a sudden it's a connection point, and we can talk about the weather because now all of a sudden we're here for something shared. So when you talk about kick and tush, that's great. But when they see that our athletes are just like them, they're trying to compete and win, and they're just trying to get the workout because they've had a rough day or whatever it is that they need in order to get their exercise fixed.
Sure.
Which, by the way, one of the biggest value propositions that I think Sportable has is the happy hour that's after our rowing session that takes place down at Rocket
Landing. More happy hours in other sports.
But it's that sense of community. We always talk about access, excellence, and community as being the three pillars of which our value proposition is on. I always think community is the best. Because it's not only community amongst our athletes, it's community amongst our athletes and volunteers. It's community amongst our caregivers. It's community amongst the parents. There's this whole set of people that get connected to what you're doing, and the commonality is sports.
Sure.
It's competition, and people can relate to that.
Sure. I think anybody you ever talk to that you say, are you a sports fan, or you following the baseball players, you're following the Redskins, wherever they go, no, I'm not a sports fan. I just want to go, there's a gap in your life.
Oh, no.
I don't, there's just a gap. I mean, you don't have, it just...
But then they go to the library and talk bad about you.
Yeah.
I want you to know that. They think you have the gap.
Okay, so anybody that's listening wants to get in touch with you in the social media world, what's the best way?
Oh, gosh. In the social media world, I'm so unsocial. I will
that
say
is
this.
Not
we could just send them to your website if you like. If you don't want to
so listen, so sportable.org is great, but also we've got a great Facebook presence. I've got a great young staff. I think we have a pretty good footprint in terms of social media. And I don't know if it's because we necessarily know what we're doing, but our content is so compelling because our athletes' stories are so compelling. But I think our Facebook page is really good. Our Instagram page is really good. You can find me at sportable.org. You can call the office. But really, I'm not the person that does anything for you. Our team, so Alicia McConnell's our athletic director. Nicole and Forrest are our two program directors. Hey, by the way, getting ready to hire a third because you know what we're starting next year? Wheelchair rugby. We're super excited about that.
My gosh.
That's right. Hey-o.
That's sport number 13, is that right?
It's, you know, I've tried to get away from that. Yes, it is sport number 13. I would say we have 20 programs, though. Because you think about it, road racing is really 2 programs because it's 2 big races.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, we have chair users, but then we also have visually impaired.
Sure. They
have their own training night. Hell, the road racing's 4 programs.
Sure.
You know, I almost started to get away from that a little bit, but yes, we have a ton of program nights. Yeah. By the way, so how many days in a year?
365.
Hey, hadn't changed in a while. Hey, next year, our 2019 calendar has 381 sessions. So, I mean, it's pretty impressive. We got stuff going on.
Impressive.
Let's do the time warp again. Yeah, you're out of days.
I know. By the new math.
They got to double up.
So I got a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. Fast forward, and again, from a global perspective.
Sorry.
From a global perspective, where would you like to see adaptive sports? Now, again, just adaptive sports globally. Where would you like to see adaptive sports in 10 years? You can talk about that from a Sportable perspective, or actually, I'd like both if you could, like from a global perspective and a Sportable perspective.
From a global perspective, I think adaptive sports, in terms of interest, is picking up. Right? I think, and I'm going to screw up some of these names. Don't think I'm an expert on anything, but like there was Prince Harry. And Prince Harry is all about is it Invictus game? Am I saying that right?
You're nailing it.
Okay. So here's the sad reality is that we've been at war almost now for 20 years, right?
Sure.
And so about 10% of our athletes are vets, which, by the way, in terms of the Paralympic sport model, is actually a little bit less, but mainly because we have Walter Reed to our north and Hampton Roads to our southeast. But we still at 10%, we have a pretty good amount of veterans that are involved. And so I think the amount of veteran activity is driving interest, which is great. But I will say this, in terms of in sports in general, and also entertainment in general, how we consume, like consumer content, is changing. Mm-hmm. But to the extent that ESPN has the Ocho in 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. I'd like to see adaptive sports have a seat at the table.
Have a foothold.
Right? I tell you what, some of the most compelling content you can see is the wheelchair doubles in Wimbledon. Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that goes viral. Yeah. I mean, right. So you'd like to have a little bit more appreciation and have different ways that you can consume it that would be easier.
Sure.
That's okay. On a global state, I would say that. There are other things in terms of funding and whatnot, but I would say those things on the most basic level, if we had more interest globally.
Well, you're absolutely seeing more. Adaptive sports on some of your sports channels. I know when Olympics are rolling around. Mm-hmm. For those that don't know, when the Olympics occur, probably 2 or 3 months after, we'll call them the able-bodied Olympics.
2 or 3 weeks.
A month. I apologize.
Yeah. Not long.
Thank you for the correction. But a couple of weeks after the quote-unquote normal Olympics end, mm-hmm. The adaptive Olympics take place. And I always love those times because you're starting to see more and more of those races televised on TV. And I know Sportable's had some success with some Olympic athletes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, Alexa Halko is a young lady that went to Rio, won 3 medals, won a bronze, won 2 silvers. She's an incredibly fast young lady. She is now a freshman at the University of Illinois, where she is competing on the track and
field team. The Fighting Illini.
Or the Rolling Illini, I guess.
Or the Rolling Fighting Illini. We'll do a little compound there.
There you go.
So she went there. She had a lot of success. I will say this. We talk internally about who has the potential to go to Tokyo. We think we legitimately have a shot to send 3 athletes to Tokyo, which is where we'll be in 2020.
Outstanding.
It is. It's amazing.
Incredible.
Now, look, here's the deal. They might get injured the week before. You never know. You never know. Knock on wood.
Throughout the sports world, such it is, yeah.
That's right. And by the way, that's one of our biggest challenges, right? So do we try to promote the Paralympic track and put resources towards getting people the elite training they need, or do we try to go and impact more athletes?
Sure.
Because that's a big challenge. And that's one of the big, challenges we face. But we're hoping to have that Paralympic success and send athletes here, which, by the way, is great for the sport globally, but it's also great for us locally. When we get that, when we have athletes that can perform at that level. You talk about globally, I think the interest locally, we want to be the best. Now, it's very subjective. It doesn't mean that we're going to win national championships on the court. It doesn't mean we're going to serve the most amount of athletes, because at the end of the day, we serve athletes because there's a need for it, right? We want to deliver the best possible programming with the best possible coaches in the safest, best possible environment for our athletes to achieve excellence, however they choose to define it.
Sure.
And if we can do that, then we're good to go.
Sure. I'm going to ask one. I think
You're the host. You can do whatever you want.
Do whatever I want.
Don't ever get married because she'll never say that you can do whatever you want. I just want to let you know that.
What can people? We have listeners from our area where we're located here in Virginia, but we also have listeners from outside of Virginia. What can people do to help Sportable? I know most of our funds are raised through fundraising.
Yeah.
What can people do if they're listening to us? Whenever it is, what can people do? How can they donate? What are things that they can do to get involved with? I'm thinking more particularly for the people who aren't local.
Yeah. So listen, I would say this: if to help us, to help our cause, you can always go to sportable.org. You can click on the donate button. We're in the process of revamping our website, so I don't necessarily love our website right now, but I can tell you this: we make it pretty easy to donate.
Yep.
If you can read the word donate, you can go right there, buddy. It will take you through the whole process. Listen. Financial resources are key to what we do. Our earned revenue is 2%. And I don't care how much we grow or what we do as an organization, that's probably not going to change. Because at the end of the day, our athletes have a lot of financial hurdles, just given the set of circumstances they're dealing with.
Sure.
So it's not like their fees are ever going to cover the cost of what it takes to deliver. So financial resources are great. Mm-hmm. But here's what I would say. The most basic thing you can do is be a fan. Be informed. Be an advocate. We have this initiative. We call it Army of Orange. And it's a volunteer group, and they do some fundraising for us. But one of the things that we ask them to do is that we ask them to be advocates. And we have this thing that's called the soapbox story, okay? Mm-hmm. So here's the deal. If you go into a local restaurant and you see a soapbox and it's out of the reach of a normal wheelchair user, then you have a right. Not only do you have a right, you have an obligation to say something to the restaurant owner about making sure that it's accessible for everyone so that people can understand and be advocates for our athletes in everyday life. They should be advocates for our athletes, what they're trying to do on the playing field and how they live life every day. If they can do that, that's how they can help Sportable and everybody like us in the country.
Sure. Well, I think that's a phenomenal way to end, but I also do want to say thank you to Sportable because over the next few episodes, they will be our gracious sponsors for the next couple of episodes.
All right.
So thank you very much to Sportable for sponsoring our next handful of episodes moving forward. We will be sure.
Is that what you said you wanted to talk to me about afterwards?
No.
Is that what I had to bring the check?
No,
that's
right. But we will continue to help promote Sportable. Hunter, thank you for joining us tonight. Bob, any thoughts that you'd like to?
No, that's all right. I'll let you have the final word. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 16, and you've been listening to the Six Wheels Consulting Podcast. When we get together again, keep rolling and think inclusion.